Ethiopia. But what that kind of reminds me when I read that is the stories I heard from my mom, who used to always talk about Warder and wanting to see Warder independent one day. And that is what motivates me. Some of the things that really motivate me to get involved and become a human rights activist for this cause is because of the stories that I have lived with and I have heard over and over and over. 30 years plus. It's interesting, some of my research I came across in 1977, 75, 76, 77. Yusuf Dere, a Somali poet, created a poem talking about how he had sleepless nights because of the news coming from Abale and Dagahabur. We're talking about 1975, 1976. 30 years later, in 2007, the news from Abale is still the same. Not fair. Nowhere near fair that this should be ignored. And you kind of look at Yusuf Dere creating poetry and trying to raise consciousness, and then you kind of juxtapose that to Rhoda Afternoon in 2007 in Australia, a refugee, born in refugee camps, brought up in refugee camps, creating poetry about the plight of these people. And you just sort of say to yourself, are these people less than human? Why is it that their cause is not as important as everybody else's cause? The current regime has expelled, actually in the first 4 or 5 years, they have expelled and jailed more reporters and journalists than the entire continent of Africa's dictatorial presidents. You could see the writings were in the wall when these people were early on creating what they were creating. When we as immigrants talk about the brain drain of Africa or the South and the brain gain of the North, you kind of sit and think about the Ogaden. And what comes to mind is the interrupted human development. It's not so much, you know, the reoccurring brain drain and gain and you name it, people are leaving the place. But those who are left behind, their development is disrupted and interrupted. And I am still trying to coin concepts that can capture that sort of, how do you capture the interruption of human brain development, human capacity development, that people are constantly fleeing, that people are constantly in refugee camps in a neighboring country, they go back. I interviewed, and one of the people who was actually sitting in that interview, a young man, reminded me today when I was in Nairobi a few years back interviewing a 77-year-old who talked about leaving the Ogaden 7 times in his life. Fleeing, not leaving, fleeing. And had bullet wounds to show for. So when you see somebody like that, still smiling, still resisting, still talking about hope, imagine if that person had a stable life, their capacity and their potential. So what we need to think about, and this is a challenge to the younger generation, is we know about brain drain. How can we articulate the interruption of human capacity development that occurred in this region? How do you even begin to articulate that? 150 years.